Just not sure how to answer to what extent. Okay, good question. When you get a to what extent question, you don't have to use the word extent. What does need to be clear though is the extent to which you agree, and the way you do that is use language, especially in your thesis and your introduction, that demonstrates where you sit on the spectrum of definitely agreeing, like fully agree, to fully disagree. So there's a spectrum of how much you agree with the statement you're provided in the question. It says to what extent do you agree? Do you strongly disagree? Do you strongly agree? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Figure out where you sit and then use language that makes it clear. And a really good example is this. Come up with a sentence that explains the area that you agree with respect to the question, okay? So, to what extent is it true? Say the bit that's true to you, and then say the word however. So however is then going to be followed by the extent to which you disagree, okay? And another way to do it is you start a sentence with a word like whilst. Whilst da-da-da-da-da happens, and then say the idea, comma, this also happens, and that's a counter. So it needs to be very clear where you sit by the language, by whether you're using a word like however or whilst. Are you showing two different perspectives? Are you showing an argument and a counter argument within your introduction? And have you made that really clear by using a word like whilst, whereas, however, but, yet? So those 4 words, or those 4 or 5 words, will be really helpful in helping you tell the marker without literally saying, I agree 90% with the question. I agree to a significant extent even. Maybe in a history essay, it's really good to use the word to a significant extent, to a limited extent. In English, you want to have a little bit more flair, and you don't want to avoid the question there, but you want to show it without literally saying the words there. They're not the prettiest words to have to use in an English essay. Now, let's look back at that spectrum. So you get a statement and you think, that's exactly what I think about the text, so I strongly agree. Can you think of how someone would disagree? Because it's always good to consider why that statement might not be entirely true. It's always good to consider why a statement in a question might not be entirely true, because that's what the sophisticated students do. They think, okay, yes, that is true, but it's not completely true. Rarely is something completely true that they give you in a question. They're actually giving you a statement to test who's going to think critically enough to appreciate how this might not be true, okay? And that's why you use a statement like whilst or however. You'll use those words to frame your agreement, but also your disagreement. Make sure it's clear which one you are siding with. If you were fully agreeing with something, you would use words like unequivocally, like the text unequivocally, which means like fully, unequivocally represents this, and you go on to expand on that idea that's in the statement. Or you might say something like, in no way does the text suggest this. In fact, it suggests the opposite. You can almost use the words extent there, like in no way or unequivocally, but I would avoid using extent there, because to what extent is not really a key word. That's just the type of question that you'll get in. Hopefully that makes sense. So you use those words, keep it simple, and make sure that if you think you are 100% in agreement, you have thought about any potential way that someone, even if it's not you, might disagree. And it's always good to acknowledge that just a little bit, even if you're really sold on the statement. And if you think you disagree entirely, try and find how you agree just a little bit, and then make it clear in your tone and where your emphasis is in the sentences, how much you disagree or whether you disagree more than you agree. That should be obvious from the tone of the piece. But make sure you've considered the potential for disagreement or agreement. I would rarely go 100% either side, because that's less nuanced. You want to show nuance. You want to show that you understand the complexity of a topic. And to understand the complexity of a topic, you need to show that you can appreciate multiple perspectives.